Good morning students. Hope you all are preparing well for your upcoming exams. So today we are going to start with a very important topic for your exam, which is phrasal verbs. Direct questions are asked from this topic. So without any further delay, let's begin. So what is a phrasal verb? A phrasal verb is a combination of words that when used together usually take on a different meaning than the original verb. It is the combination of verb and preposition or verb and adverb. Fine? Is it clear? Now we will study some phrasal verbs which either have already been asked in your exams or are important for your upcoming exams. So let's begin. So using the verb ask, the following phrasal verbs can be formed. First one is ask after. It means to ask about the welfare or someone's well-being. Basically, to make inquiries about the health of someone. For example, I met Alia and she was asking after you. Now, next is ask for. It means to request something. For example, the employees ask for a raise. Now, next is ask around. That is, ask a number of people for information or help. Basically, to talk to different people in order to find out information about someone or something. For example, I have no idea, but I'll ask around at work and see if anyone can help. Now, moving on, next verb is bear. Following phrasal verbs can be formed using the verb bear. So, first one is bear away. Bear away means to win. For example, the young scholar bore away the first prize. Next is bear down. It means to overthrow or crush. For example, the director easily bore down all opposition. Now moving on, next is bear out. That is to confirm somebody's statement or to support the argument, basically to substantiate. For example, your brother will bear me out in this matter. Now, next is bear up. It means to keep up spirits, not give way, not to despair, basically to withstand stress or difficulty. For example, she bore up wonderfully on the journey. Now, moving on, next verb is break. So, our first phrasal verb is break away. It means to run away, or you can say escape from someone's hold. So, for example, the horse broke away from the stable. Now, next is break down. It has two meanings. In case of a person, breakdown means to collapse or fail. A loss or failure of mental or physical health, that is to become very bad or to lose control emotionally or mentally, basically to lose control of one's emotions. So, for example, his health broke down last summer. And another meaning is in case of machine or vehicles, it means to stop working. So, this one is in case of machines or vehicles. For example, the car broke down on the highway. So, is it clear? Now, next is break into. It means to enter by force, usually to steal something. For example, the burglars broke into the shop. Now, next is break off. Again, it has two meanings. First one is to stop suddenly, that is to abruptly stop speaking, talking or doing something. For example, John Bright broke off in the middle of his speech. Now, another meaning of break off is to end a relationship. For example, they broke off their business relationship. Now, next phrasal verb is break open. It means to break by force, that is open something using force. For example, the police broke open the door. Now, next is break out. It means to start suddenly, used in case of disease, war and other unpleasant things. For example, dengue has broken out in the city. So, is it clear? Now, next is break with. It means to quarrel with someone. For example, I don't want to break with him for your sake. Now, next is breakthrough. Again, it has two meanings. So, first meaning is a sudden advance or a huge amount of progress or an important discovery or development. For example, the discovery of penicillin in 1928 was a breakthrough for modern medicine. Now, in case of success, breakthrough means to achieve recognition or success or reach a higher level in their career. For example, his breakthrough album sold 12 million copies. So, is the meaning clear? Now, moving on, next verb is bring. Following phrasal verbs can be formed from it. So, first one is bring about, meaning cause something to happen. For example, his dishonesty brought about his ruin. Next is bring in. It means to earn or yield. For example, his books bring in but a small income. Next is bring out. It means to publish. For example, the publisher is bringing out a revised edition of this book. Now, next phrasal verb is bring on, meaning to cause something to happen or to occur. So, for example, intemperance in diet brings on many ailments. Now, next is bring round. It means to cause somebody to regain consciousness, that is basically to restore someone to consciousness. For example, if she faints again, bring her round with smelling salts. Now, next is bring round to. It means to persuade someone to agree to something or agree to one's opinion. For example, at last I brought him round to my way of thinking. Clear? Now, next phrasal verb is bring up. Again, it has two meanings. One meaning is to raise a matter for discussion or consideration. For example, the matter was brought up in the council. Another meaning is to rear, raise, educate, or you can say look after. For example, the Nehru children were well brought up. Now, moving on, next verb is call. Phrasal verbs formed using it are as follow. First one is call for. It means to demand for an answer, explanation and so on. For example, the headmaster called for an explanation from the student for his conduct. Next is call forth. It means to bring out or to cause something to come into action or existence, basically to draw out something hidden, or you can say latent. Let us understand this with the help of an example. Adversity calls forth the best qualities in man. So, is it clear? Now, moving on, next is call in. It means summon or send for. For example, he called in a doctor at once. Now, next is call upon, meaning to formally invite someone to do something or ask somebody to speak. So, for example, I now call upon the chairman to address the meeting. For example, I now call upon the chairman to address the meeting. Now, moving on, next phrasal verb is call up, meaning to recollect or to recall. For example, the old man could not call up past events. Another meaning of call up is to contact someone by phone. For example, call up the chemist and order some castor oil. Now, moving on, next phrasal verb is call on, that is to pay a visit to someone. For example, I shall call on you next Monday. Next is call off, meaning to cancel. For example, the match was called off because of rain. Now, moving on, next verb is carry. So, using the verb carry, the following phrasal verbs can be formed. First one is carry off. It means taken away, die or killed. For example, many persons are carried off every year by diarrhea. Now, another meaning of carry off is to win. For example, he is sure to carry off the first prize. Now, moving on, next is carry on, meaning to manage or to continue doing something. For example, in the absence of the principal, the vice principal carried on the work. Now, next is carry out, meaning to execute or fulfill. For example, I shall gladly carry out your instructions. Now, next is carry away, meaning to lose self-control. For example, his passion carried him away. Now, next is carry the day. It means to be successful, to gain victory. For example, the Indian team carried the day at Wimbledon. Now, moving on, next verb is cut. Following phrasal verbs can be formed using the verb cut. First one is cut down, meaning to reduce or to curtail. For example, prices have risen and we must cut down our expenses. Now, next is cut in, meaning to interrupt. For example, while he was speaking, Sam kept cutting in. Now, next is cut out for. So, cut out for something means to be suitable for, specially fitted, or to have the qualities that you need for a particular job or activity. So, let us understand this with the help of an example. I am cut out for the profession of teaching. So, is it clear? Now, next is cut up. It means to be very affected, very distressed. For example, father was greatly cut up by his son's death. Now, moving on, next verb is come. So, using it, following phrasal verbs can be formed. First one is come about. It means to happen. For example, nobody knows how these things come about. Now, next is come across, meaning to meet by chance. For example, on my way to school, I came across an old friend of mine. Then next is come by, meaning to get something. So for example, how did you come by that scratch on your cheek? Now, next is come down. With respect to price, it means to become lower or cheaper. Let us understand this with the help of an example. Gold has come down recently. So, is it clear? Now, moving on, next is come out, meaning to become known, transpire basically. So, for example, at last the truth has come out. Now, next is come round. It means to agree, to accept someone's opinion. For example, after some discussion, he came round to our views. Clear? Now, moving on, next one is come up, meaning raised for discussion, basically mooted. For example, the issue of safety came up twice during the meeting. So, is it clear? Now, moving forward, next verb is fall. So, our first phrasal verb using it is fall back, meaning to retreat, comma, withdraw. So, for example, the defeated armies fell back. Now, the next one is fall flat. It means to fail to produce any effect. For example, his suggestions fell flat. Now, moving on, next phrasal verb is fallen, meaning to sink inward, basically to collapse. For example, after the rains, the roof fell in. Now, next is fall in with, meaning happens to meet or to meet accidentally. For example, on my way to the market, I fell in with my school friend. So, is it clear? Now, next one is fall out, that is to quarrel. For example, leave the children alone for a minute and they will fall out. Next phrasal verb is fall through, meaning to fail. For example, for want of support, his scheme fell through. Now, moving on, next phrasal verb is fall off, meaning to diminish, that is to become less, comma, decrease. For example, in the second school term, the attendance fell off. So, is it clear? Now, moving forward, next verb is get. Phrasal verbs formed using get are as follow. Get about, meaning rumored or to spread, comma, circulate. For example, it is getting about that he is to be dismissed soon. Next is get off, meaning to escape punishment, comma, to be acquitted, basically to escape the consequences of an action. Let us understand this with the help of an example. He has got off very lightly this time. So, is it clear? Now, moving on, next phrasal verb is get over, meaning to overcome. For example, he can get over the difficulties easily. Now, next is get through, meaning to pass. For example, he has got through his examination. Now, next one is get at. It means to reach or obtain something or basically gain access to something. For example, the thirsty crow could not get at the water in the jug. Now, moving on, next phrasal verb is get round, meaning to persuade someone or to influence someone. For example, at last I got him round to my point of view. Fine. So, is it clear? Now, phrasal verbs formed using verb give, go, hold, keep and lay. So, these are your homework. Do them on your own. I will provide you the PPT later on. So, basically the ones that I am skipping, you will do them on your own. It's your homework. So, just go through them once. See you guys in the next class. Till then, take care. Bye.